Thank you for tuning in to the Doing Business with God podcast.
Hey, you. Yes, you. I am your host, Michi Renee.
It is Michi's passion to help you live your best life and do business God's way. Michi will be talking about entrepreneurship, manifestation, monetization, mindset, beliefs, starting and growing a business, nonprofit, or ministry, all while serving God. So welcome to My Daddy's Business. It's time for the show. It's the Doing Business with God podcast with your host, Michi Renee.
Hello, tribe. Welcome back to another episode of the Doing Business with God podcast, dedicated to helping you do business God's way. In this episode, I will be talking to my guest, Miss Karen Jones. Karen, welcome to the show today.
Well, thank you so much. I so appreciate your warm welcome. It is just an honor to be here with you and with all your tribe. This is great.
Great. So let's just get into it. Karen, tell us about yourself, what you've done in the past and your entrepreneur journey that has led you to where you are right now.
Sure. So I am a retired OBGYN doctor. So I practiced here in Seattle for, over 28 years. And my journey is one where over time, I found myself in a fulfilling job, but gradually I became less and less fulfilled. And I know that's something that happens to a lot of us. And that's kind of what gets us to make a turn. So I, went on, I had great life. I'm married. I've been married 40 years. I have two grown kids, so great kids. We loved hiking and mountain climbing, great job, wonderful patients and colleagues. But, I just kept getting unhappy. I actually developed insomnia. I started getting more and more anxiety. So it became harder to cope with just the normal day-to-day stress of the kind of job I was in. And I had a lot of expectations for myself. So when I considered, just stopping, I had, no, I can't because got to pay for the kids' education. No, I can't because I put in so many years, at my job and I'm so good, on and on and on. And finally, I literally or metaphorically hit a wall and realized that forcing myself to stay when I wasn't happy was not good for me. I was harming myself. And I wasn't being the best person I could be for my patients either. And certainly not for my colleagues. And certainly, me being grumpy was no help for my home life either. So what I realized is I literally gave myself permission to retire and say, okay, now I can stop. And that was, 4.5 years ago now. And then over that time, I began exploring what this longing inside me to create something and to really begin defining it. And it was really around empowering women, teaching and mentoring. And I'd become an energy healer during this whole process too. So I had both this left brain medicine thing and this right brain energy healing thing going on.
Yes.
And I brought that plus my desire to empower women. And then in particular over this last year, over 2020, it really began to come together. And so my whole thing is about helping women who are, successful and accomplished, but are feeling secretly unhappy to unleash their power so they can create a truly meaning-filled and luscious life.
Absolutely. So what made you finally realize, because being an MD, that was a lot of work to get your education, all of your certifications, all the stuff you had to do to keep your license and all of that stuff. When did you really realize? Was it in year 5, year 10? When did you realize that wasn't it?
We hope that you are enjoying this episode. If you would like to be a guest, check the show notes for all the details. Let's get back to the Doing Business with God podcast with Michi Renee.
Yeah, there were several bumps along the way. I had one bump in the late 1990s. I just got curious about mind-body medicine and reading about chakras, because what I realized is Western medicine just wasn't very well defining why we get sick in the first place and how we heal, because there's a lot more going on besides simply what's going on the physical. That was the time we were really understanding about stress. And so the whole mind-body medicine started to go on. And it's kind of a funny story because I was getting into this, and just because I was kind of going, there's something more. There's something more. What is it? What is it? What is it? And I was at a Carolyn Mace conference back in early 2000. And what I'd been noticing is tingling in the palms of my hands. And I just mentioned it to this woman in the lunch line. And she said, oh, that sounds like energy. Why don't you look up healing touch? So I get home, and granted, this is 2000, but Google was still working at that point. And there really is something called healing touch. I never found it when I Googled it. Instead, I ran into the Barbara Brennan School of Healing. And when I read about its description of the program, both teaching energy healing and a lot, 50%, personal growth work, there was that inside me that said yes. And so I went and did that program at the same time as still doctoring. So that was a big piece there. And then, probably the last 5-8 years I was in practice, I was just getting more kind of going, there's something more I want, but I'm not going to let myself have it. There's something more that I want, but I can't give up medicine. Doing that. I did that for years. I admit, maybe I'm a slow learner, but I think we often do.
We get
And I
attached to
tried
the
various
titles.
things. Yeah, I tried various things at work. Like I stopped doing obstetrics because I thought maybe I'm just, I'm not sleeping so well. So maybe that's the problem. I stopped doing call. I did gynae only. I learned how to do robotic surgery, which is fabulous, by the way. So I kept up leveling my medical skills. And that was all great. But there was still that part of me that said, there's something more I want. What is it? What is it? What is it?
Yeah, absolutely. That's
Did
always,
that answer your question there?
yes, that still small voice, that's intuition, that's God, that spiritual realm that we ignore and we don't bring it
Totally.
forth in our life, in our business, in our careers. And then we just keep going and going and going. And then it's like, boom, like you said, you hit that wall and you don't have a choice but to recognize and figure out what it's about.
That is so totally it, because it's both, because that small voice inside, that inner intuition, that inner yes, to me, that's the voice of God. It's the voice of spirit. It's my IS aspect of, I call it the I am presence, whatever you want to call it. My aspect of the divine is saying, there is something bigger for you. You have more to contribute to this world, whether it's holding my energy up or actually going out and teaching people to help them to be more and more listening to their joy and doing it.
So what
Kind
did
of
your family, friends, your husband, your kids, did they think you were crazy? Like, what was that situation like when you decided that you were going to retire?
right. Well, my husband was actually very supportive because he'd actually
Okay.
retired early from his job. He worked at Boeing and he retired because stuff going on at work, but he no longer was fulfilled at work, and he finally said, heck with this. I'm stopping. It was me that kind of do it. So he'd been saying, yeah, honey, you can stop. We got enough savings. You can stop. He's kind of looked like a little raising his eyebrows a bit as I've done this training and starting a new business and, getting my coaching and support that I need to do it. Because he's kind of going, okay, all right. What?
Yes, well, at least, that is key. At least he's on board with you, even though he doesn't fully understand it.
Yes.
He's still being supportive in some kind of way versus there are other people out there who don't have that. And that is a blessing in itself.
It is a real blessing because, I basically, when I realized there was some additional training I wanted to get, I kind of basically went to him and said, this is what I'm going to do. What are your concerns about this? As opposed to, I wasn't doing I'm asking permission. No,
Right.
I wasn't doing that. And he's really smart guy. So I can ask him like business stuff and get his ideas and his thought, which I don't necessarily follow, but it's great.
Yes.
It's very different because way back in 2001, when I was going to energy healing school, he was not supportive there because I think with all the personal growth work I was doing, at that point, he was afraid that I was going to change enough that I would move away from him.
Mm.
Looking back, that's what I feel like was actually happened. He didn't say that, but I think there was some fear there. Whereas now it's sort of like, okay, honey, we both are really supportive of each other doing what we love to do. He loves mountain climbing, and I've done some of that with him and some of it without him.
Mm-hmm.
And he supports me in this. So we support each other. So we
Yeah.
do a lot of stuff together and a lot of stuff kind of in parallel.
Yeah, that's a healthy relationship. You should definitely have the things you do together and you each have separate lives. I mean, you can't be with the person 24/7. That is definitely not healthy. So as you stepped away from your medical career, what is it that you are birthing or putting together or putting out there in your entrepreneurial journey? How are you supporting women? What can they look out for you coming up in 2021?
At Travel Genie, we make your travel dreams come true. We customize your trip. We create itineraries, book airfare, hotels, cars, and event tickets. We don't just book travel. We create experiences. Travel Genie has 4 trips planned for 2021. San Francisco, Essence, Toronto, and Bali. A $100 deposit gets you started. Use the link below for more information. Find us on Instagram and Facebook at Travel Genie 2017 and online at travelgenie.com.
Okay, so I'm really about helping women find meaning. You see, what's happened over the last like 40, 50 years is we as women, the big context, the big picture is we women have shifted from accomplishment from we were, in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, we were getting into some of the traditional male roles. We began to be doctors and lawyers, entrepreneurs, CEOs, things like that. But we did it the way the guys did with a lot of strategy and logic. That worked very well. Obviously, there are things where strategy and logic is exactly what you got to have. You want to put together a business plan. You want to have your steps down. You want to know what it is. But the thing that's happened over particularly the last 20 years, is we've shifted from desiring accomplishment to having our focus being on meaning, on fulfillment, on self-actualization,
Yeah.
what you would call the top level of Maslow's hierarchy.
Yes.
Problem is the male model way of success of logic, linear, hierarchical, step by step does not work for self-actualization, for defining our own meaning. That
Yes.
comes from within. That's
Yes.
sort of the feminine power model. So based on that understanding, what my work is to help women who are been probably overusing the masculine model and underusing the feminine model is to really learn how to access your inner, well, it's really the voice of God, the voice of spirit that's coming from the inside. So instead of saying, I'm supposed to do it this way, ABC, we're listening to that still small voice inside that says, this is the inspiration.
Yep.
I am telling you, I'm reminding you where your meaning is, because we have to learn how to listen to that.
Yes, absolutely.
Trust it.
Absolutely. I can
So,
totally
yeah.
relate. I can totally relate to what you are saying because I was there. I was the person that my masculine and feminine energy was out of whack. It was so to the one side, I was using the masculine more, that the feminine was barely on the map. And it took a lot of personal development work, a lot of self exploration, a lot of self actualization in order to bring it in balance. And it's because of all the things that we hear in society, how we're taught, how we learn that is the way that we should do it, instead of ignoring our own intuition, our spirit, all of that from within. And it's definitely work that you're doing that's needed in the world right now.
Yeah, that is so true. And I did the same thing. As I look back over my life, there are a huge number of beliefs unconscious beliefs that we take on, as children in our encounters with authority figures and teachers and our parents and just general society that we're not even aware of. They become givens. Well, of course, you have to do it this way. Of course, you have to use Crest toothpaste. They're givens. And we don't even think about asking the question, is this actually true? I know this is what we think, but that's it. Exactly. It's learning this. And for women,